Hello, I am the last prophet. Welcome back to the United Church of the Creator. Today's topic is the Indian trick. For anyone who hasn't studied history, you might not know about the Indian trick, but the Indians were a very family-oriented society that was civilized by Africans that came to America hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus, Europeans, Spanish conquerors, Catholic conversos, Moranos, or any of these other people, and their highly respectable society was brought to its knees through the bottle. You see, the Indians used to make alcohol from corn, but it would be like making Pruno. If you have ever been to jail or have spoken to anyone who has been to a prison, when you make Pruno, you mix the fruit with sugar and then you let it ferment for a couple of weeks and it turns into alcohol. So they were not living an alcoholic lifestyle, but when they had certain celebrations coming up, they would prepare the mix so that it would be done before the celebration came around. These would be the only times that the Indians would drink. Other than that, they were simply living in accordance with nature, as their African brothers had taught them. Once invaders, conquerors, explorers, or whatever cute name you want to put on it, came to America, they set up distilleries on the East Coast. The Indians were a well-organized culture with everyone playing their part, doing their job on a daily basis to keep things going. And you were not going to be able to kill the spirit in them. You would literally have to kill them. They were not going for what these people were trying to pull off on their native land. But with the introduction of firewater, as they called it, their society started to decline rapidly. You see, a drunk man cannot perform his duties. And each tribe of Indians has a chief who is the highest respected person within the tribe because of his conduct, his leadership, his morality, and his wisdom. And he never does anything out of character or against his tribe. Now picture this man that everyone loves and respects coming out of his teepee naked, stumbling around drunk and out of his wits, now trying to sleep with his braves' wives, things that he has never done. And the braves are at a loss as to what to do because not only are they drunk too, but now the chief is committing offenses that have never been committed in the timeline of Indian traditions. The Indians were weakened through the bottle, and after being weakened, they were easily taken over by outsiders who wanted their land and resources. What the invaders did to the Indians was not unique. History is constantly repeating itself, but the tactic that they used, which was to poison the fabric of the society through the bottle, was new. And once they had bewildered the Indians through the bottle and turned them into alcoholics, destroyed their unity, took away their ability to stand as warriors, the rest, as they say, is history. If you have been to any Indian reservations as I have, to this day, they are still affected by alcoholism as if it was deeply ingrained in their psyche and was not something that was introduced to them by foreigners. Once these foreigners saw how the Indian trick worked on them, the next step in the disgusting nature of certain cultures was to load up the ships and take the rum and whatever other alcohol they had at the time and head to Africa, where they traded trinkets and alcohol for things that were actually valuable. I'm telling you that certain cultures have been on bull since the beginning of time. I urge anyone listening to this video to study history. That is the only way you can stop yourself from mistreating people and repeating acts of history that you might think are unique to your present time, but they are actually the same old tricks. I say all that to say that I need you to clean yourself up. You were not born an alcoholic. You have been propagandized into thinking that alcohol is a normal part of your routine as if it were exercise. Fitness and eating right should be routine. Alcohol should be eliminated from your life or limited to your birthdays, the birthdays of friends, the birth of a child, or the death of an elder. If it is not those occasions, it's going to harm you in some way. I don't even drink for those occasions. I had to give it up. I was watching my family self-destruct. You see, my family is full of alcoholics and drug addicts. And at some point, we have to be the generation to clean this situation up. We have to be the generation to turn this ship around, because this course that we are on is sad. And you have it in you. You have the power in you to ignore the commercials, to ignore all the advertisements, to ignore the fact that they put all these liquor stores in your community. You have it in you to ignore all of that and chase your divinity and make the decision that if you would not give it to a child, you will not give it to yourself. A few short stories about the Indian trick. I went to see my female cousin who was married to a cool Russian kid. And as you know, drinking is a part of Russian culture, but it's still the Indian trick because nobody can put together any analysis that shows that alcohol is beneficial for your health in the long run. So I went to visit her. I think it was for a Super Bowl. And she says she's leaving him because he's drinking too much and she just can't take it anymore, and all types of other things. But it was really sad because they have two beautiful girls. And with me being from a broken home and seeing that they've been trying to make it work, and also her being from a broken home, I didn't want to see them separate over this. He makes a really good income, but when he comes home, you know what the American propaganda way is. Have a drink. So that's what he does every day on repeat while the family is being neglected. So I sat him down. I didn't tell him that she was planning on leaving him. I just sat him down and I told him about the Indian trick as I tell you now. And to the men listening to this, you are the chief in your household, as the Indian chief was to his people. And you cannot come home and expect to be respected as the chief as you slur your words and stumble through the house giving commands. That's not how life works. You have to move in a respectful manner in order for your women and children to respect you. And at the time, his daughters were wilding out a little bit, but that alcoholism was destroying his household. So he sat on it for a while, and I guess he digested the message. It's been a couple years now, and they're doing really good. She said he doesn't drink anymore. I guess the thought of losing his family over the bottle was enough for him to get it together, because it was going to be hard for him to find another one like her in this world full of deception. Another story. My uncle, who in my opinion was with a terrible woman that he should have just left, but the alcohol/Indian trick intervened in one of their many fights, and he ended up pushing her during an argument, which he would not have done in a sober mind. She tripped over something when he pushed her and broke her ankle while his two kids were watching. They had witnessed his alcoholism their whole life, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And in one fateful night, my uncle lost the love of his two kids, his wife, and his county job that afforded him a very comfortable lifestyle, all from the bottle. The loss of all of these things in one night sent him into a very deep depression. He lost his house, which his wife got. The kids hated him for doing that to their mom and for being drunk all the time, and he lost his job. He sank into the bottle and just drank and drank constantly. You see, he fell victim to the Indian trick. A third story would be one of my family members who hit her daughter while drunk arguing with her. First, let me say this. This family member would come over to me at least once every 2 weeks with a problem with her daughter or something negative going on in her life. And every single time I would say, you need to stop drinking. That's what's causing you guys to have conflict. Because you are saying hurtful things to her while you are drunk that you would not say if you were sober. I can only imagine how hurtful these things would be to her daughter, because they are all each other have in this world. And this alcohol is coming in between the bond that they have and making her say vicious things to her daughter. So out of anger towards the advice I was giving, she says in a very malicious way, well, everyone can't become the Dalai Lama overnight, as if she has suffered as much as me in this life. I didn't take it personal. I just continued to love her. Well, she didn't heed any of my advice. The respect for my words was at a minimum, but it came to a point where her daughter had children, and she was so drunk at some point when they were arguing that she slapped her daughter while she was holding her newborn grandbaby, and her daughter almost dropped her grandbaby. She could never take that back. And I need everyone listening to this to be in a sober mind so that you don't make these mistakes towards your loved ones. And then expect forgiveness when you're sober. We're not playing like that. This life is real, and you gotta either love people or just leave them alone. There is no in between. There is no mistreating people constantly and then asking them to forgive you because you were drunk. She has now been sober for months, but her daughter is gone with the grandbabies, and you don't know if that bond will ever be the same. These are just some of the ways that the Indian trick will destroy you. Alcoholism is not normal. Alcoholism is not health. Do not fall for the propaganda. I don't care how cool they make it look. I don't care how expensive it is. I don't care how cheap it is. If you would not give it to a baby, don't give it to yourself. Take care of yourself and love your family. You did not come into this world as an alcoholic. You might not understand how propaganda works or mass marketing, but they are passing off the illusion that drinking is cool. But the Indian trick cost the Indians a whole country. What are you going to let it cost you? I don't know if they would have been able to hold off against the savagery of other cultures in the long run, but I know that they would have put up a much better fight had they been able to remain sober. And it was very sad to see when I went to an Indian reservation to grab a large amount of weed, and Indians were just laid out in broad daylight on the street with bottles in their hand, as if this is their legacy. That's not their legacy. They were an amazing people that lived in accordance with nature, but when you allow certain things into your life as if normal, sometimes they get a hold of you and they destroy you. So, evaluate your life, evaluate your friend group, evaluate your family get-togethers, and ask yourself, are we falling for the Indian trick? Has the Indian trick destroyed any portion of my family or my personal life? Do not just apply this to alcohol, apply this to all the drugs that you hear people commercializing as if it's something cool, as if it's what the real ones do. You know what the real ones do? The real ones tighten up. The real ones bear the load. The real ones handle life through the pain and suffering and stand tall. I'm not asking you to sober up for me. I'm sober and I'm standing tall while the doctors tell me that I'm dying. I'm just dying with dignity. I'm asking you to do it for your family. I'm asking you to do it for your child that is watching you closely, even if you don't recognize it. You can take a loss every time you get off the bottle. I want you to think of all the men and women that are in prison because they reacted while intoxicated in a way that they wouldn't have reacted had they been sober. And now they're doing life in jail because the judge doesn't want to hear, "Oh, I was drunk. That's why I killed them." Remember, it's 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Don't do it for me. Do it specifically to starve the wealthy families that are like parasites feeding off of your destruction. Do not let anyone benefit off of your suffering. And when you see these musicians or other celebrities promoting alcohol to you, remember that they don't love you. They just want a cut of the pie as you fall for the Indian trick. They already got their bag up. You have the power to starve out these families that are still rich since the days they started these distilleries on the East Coast to poison the Indians and all of these other parasites globally if you just turn your back on the bottle and all other drugs and find something more creative to do with your time here on earth. I know we're all going through things, but the bottle is not going to fix it. No drugs are going to fix it. As I say in every video, please don't check out. I never want you to give up. Hold your head high at all times and be thankful for today because it is a gift. Thank your creators through the Creator for this life, whether they are still here or have already passed. This message was brought to you with love from the United Church of the Creator. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a blessed day.